The striped polecat did not enter the thicket cautiously. It burst into it. The cut through the scrub was narrow, barely wider than the animal's body, a corridor of broken stems and bent grass where something larger had passed recently. The polecat ran low and fast, spine flexing, tail streaming behind it like a signal that no one else could read. The ground smelled fresh. Not the stale, layered scent of old paths used repeatedly by rodents and insects, but something new, sharp, green, and raw. Crushed leaves, split stems, moist soil exposed to air for the first time in weeks. The polecat slowed immediately. Fresh disturbance meant opportunity. It also meant uncertainty. The animal dropped into a stop so sudden its rear paws slid slightly forward. It lifted its head, nose twitching rapidly, pulling in scent in short, efficient bursts. Its breathing was quick but controlled, tuned to analysis rather than panic. This cut had not existed yesterday. The thicket here was usually dense, thorny shrubs, low branches interwoven with dry grass. Movement through it normally required effort and noise. Now, a narrow route ran straight through, edges ragged, plants snapped or pushed aside. Something had forced its way through. The polecat's body language shifted. Its movements became tighter, closer to the ground. It advanced a few steps, then paused, then advanced again, claws barely touching soil. The smell of the ground dominated everything. Fresh earth carried information clearly. Moisture content, recent pressure, weight. The polecat pressed its nose down briefly, then lifted it again. The scent trail was layered. One heavy disturbance, slow and deliberate, likely human or livestock, followed by smaller, faster movements afterward. Rodents. They had already begun using the cut. That mattered. The polecat followed the corridor deeper into the thicket, moving in short bursts. Its black and white pattern flashed briefly between shadows, then disappeared again as it hugged the darker side of the path. Sound behaved differently here. The thicket dampened noise quickly. Leaves absorbed vibration, stems brushed and settled. Anything moving made sound, but only briefly. After that, silence returned, thick and close. The polecat stopped again, a faint rustle ahead. It flattened instantly, belly against the ground, chin nearly touching soil. Its tail lifted slightly, stiffened, not as threat, but balance. The rustle stopped. The polecat waited. Time passed in seconds, not minutes. Then movement resumed, closer now. A small rodent crossed the cut, hesitated in the open, then darted toward cover. The polecat exploded forward. The distance was short. The strike was low and precise. The rodent tried to turn, but the smooth, freshly cleared ground betrayed it. The polecat caught it cleanly, killing quickly, efficiently. It dragged the body off the cut immediately, into cover. Eating happened fast. The polecat did not linger. It consumed what it needed, leaving little behind. Energy intake mattered more than possession. When it returned to the cut, it did not resume running. It walked. The animal understood now what this place was. A shortcut. Not just for it, but for everything else that moved close to the ground. The cut connected feeding areas that were previously separated by dense vegetation. It reduced effort. It increased encounters. It increased risk. The polecat reached the end of the cut where it opened onto more open ground. Dry earth, scattered stones, the edge of human-modified land. Tire marks were faint, but present. The heavy disturbance scent made sense now. The polecat stopped at the boundary. It did not cross. Instead, it turned back and ran the cut again, faster this time, confident in the terrain. The fresh smell was already fading slightly as air dried the soil and insects began their work. This place would not stay new for long. But for now, it was alive with possibility. Above the thicket, birds shifted position, watching the corridor below without calling. Insects moved along broken stems. The ground, newly exposed, held scent clearly and honestly. The striped polecat vanished back into the scrub, already adjusting its mental map. The cut remained. and everything that moved near the ground would find it soon enough. The cut did not stay empty for long. By the next night, its edges had already begun to change. Broken stems dried and curled inward. Insects gathered where sap had seeped out, forming thin, moving lines along crushed leaves. The fresh smell remained, but it was no longer singular. It layered quickly. The striped polecat returned just after sunset. This time, it did not run. It entered the cut cautiously, head low, shoulders tense, reading the ground as it moved. New tracks crossed the corridor, small light imprints that had not been there before. Rodents had begun using the path regularly, moving faster and farther than they could through dense thicket. The cut had become efficient. Efficiency always attracted attention. The polecat followed the path in short segments, stopping often to sample scent from the soil and plant edges. It could distinguish individual movements now, one rodent that favoured the centre of the path, another that hugged the darker edge, a third that crossed only briefly and never lingered. More concerning were the heavier impressions. A second predator had passed through. The scent was faint but distinct. Older, carried on fur and muscle rather than ground contact. Something larger than the polecat, slower but stronger. Not a direct competitor, but not harmless either. The polecat's behaviour shifted immediately. Its movement became more erratic, not careless, but less predictable. It crossed the cut at angles, left it, re-entered farther along. It avoided using the same stretch twice in a row. Predictability killed small hunters. Near the middle of the corridor, the polecat froze. The ground smelled wrong. Not fresh disturbance, compressed, flattened repeatedly. The soil here had lost its softness. That meant frequent passage, too frequent. The polecat backed away a few steps and circled through cover, approaching the same spot from the side. From this angle, it detected another layer. A faint marking scent placed deliberately on a low stem. Territory. Not claimed aggressively, but noted. The polecat did not challenge it. Instead, it altered how it hunted the cut. Rather than pursuing prey along the corridor, it waited beside it, using the path as a funnel. Rodents moving confidently through open ground slowed just enough at the edge of cover for the polecat to strike. 2 hunts succeeded that night. Neither was dramatic. Both were quick. The polecat dragged each kill away from the cut immediately, refusing to feed in the open corridor. By morning, birds had adjusted too. Small ground-feeding species avoided landing directly on the path. They crossed it in short hops, wings beating quickly, never stopping. Calls from the thicket grew more cautious, less frequent. The cut was no longer neutral. It carried meaning. Later that day, heat dried the soil further. The sharp green smell softened. Dust began to replace moisture, dulling scent clarity. The corridor aged rapidly, losing the advantage of novelty. The polecat returned once more before dusk. It ran the cut quickly this time, not hunting, not testing, just passing through, updating its internal map. When it reached the far end, it paused, sniffed once, then turned away. The cut would remain useful, but it would never be safe again. As darkness fell, another animal moved through the corridor, heavier than the polecat, slower, unconcerned with subtlety. The plants bent again. The ground compacted further. The path learned its users, and the striped polecat, already adjusting, began to treat the cut not as opportunity, but as exposure. The cut changed first in the morning. Before any animal moved through it, before heat lifted scent from the ground, the corridor carried a new layer, faint, dry, and unfamiliar. Oil, rubber, dust that did not belong to soil or plant. The striped polecat detected it before reaching the thicket. It stopped several body lengths away, nose lifted, reading the air rather than the ground. The smell was not strong, but it was persistent. It did not fade quickly. That meant repeated contact. Human presence. The polecat did not associate humans with direct pursuit. What it recognized was pattern disruption. Where humans moved, predictability vanished. Ground compacted unevenly. Sounds arrived late or early. Cover changed shape. The polecat approached the cut from the side, staying within dense vegetation until the last possible moment. When it reached the corridor, it did not enter immediately. The ground here was different now. The soil had been pressed flat by weight greater than any animal that lived nearby. The surface no longer held scent cleanly. Tracks overlapped until individual information blurred. The polecat stepped onto the cut briefly, then withdrew. That single contact was enough. Further along, the corridor widened slightly where branches had been pushed aside deliberately rather than broken. The edges were cleaner, less ragged. Someone had passed here with intention. The cut was becoming a route, not just for animals. That night, light appeared near the far end of the thicket. Not bright, intermittent. A headlamp, a moving point that swept across leaves and ground, then disappeared, then returned. The polecat froze deep in cover. Light did not mean immediate danger, but it erased advantage. It flattened shadows. It made movement obvious. The polecat waited until the light passed, then retreated farther into the scrub. It did not use the cut again that night. Rodents reacted differently. Some avoided the corridor entirely, others used it more aggressively, sprinting through open ground to minimize time exposed. This increased speed, but also mistakes. The polecat exploited this once, from deep cover, striking at the edge of the cut without ever entering it. Afterward, it moved away quickly. The smell of humans lingered longer than expected. Even by morning, it remained faintly present, embedded in dust and crushed plants. The cut was no longer neutral, it carried attention. 2 days later, the polecat encountered fresh disturbance nearby. Another cut, parallel but shorter. Vegetation pushed aside again. Not accidental, not animal. Humans were testing routes. The polecat's territory fractured subtly. Paths that once connected feeding areas now acted as barriers. Crossing them required timing and caution. The polecat adapted by shrinking its effective range. It hunted closer to dense cover. It moved more at times when humans were absent, late night, early dawn. It accepted fewer opportunities rather than expose itself. The cut continued to exist. It dried further. Dust replaced moisture completely. The ground stopped smelling fresh. The name of the place changed, not in words, but in function. What had been an advantage became a signal. Where the ground was open and quiet, something else was always listening. The striped polecat learned this quickly. It never ran the cut again.